Yes, so my name is Natalie, and I came to find out about Wieslaw through friends of mine who had heard about them through a friend of theirs that's Polish. And our friend has had very chronic back pain for about 5 years, and he started seeing Wieslaw, and within a short amount of time realized that this was the first person that he had seen who had actually really begun to be able to support him in making progress with this chronic back pain that he had. And I was told as well that Wieslaw is able to help people with depression. And I have a friend who struggles with bipolarism, and I kept saying, oh, maybe you should go see Wieslaw, and I hadn't seen him myself. And I thought, well, I guess I should go first. You know, I keep trying to encourage her to go, and I was curious anyhow after hearing of the experiences of my friend, and so I decided to come and visit Wieslaw. And so it was really more out of curiosity. It wasn't that I was feeling any sort of health difficulties. And he sensed something within, actually on my, kind of in my left breast. And I can't say that I was really aware of a lump or anything like that. But he said that he could quite strongly sense something. And so I started coming on a regular basis, and could definitely feel during the treatments sort of quite a bit of energy moving throughout my body. And I guess fairly early on it felt that, yeah, there might have been a mass in my left breast that was a bit firmer, and it definitely subsided. But I guess because I never felt any real acute pain in any sort of way, it's my experience of healing with Wieslaw. I can't say like, oh yeah, there was a very strong pain here and then it was gone, because there never was. But I always had a belief in sort of the treatments that I was receiving from him, and continue to always sort of, I guess, value the information that he's able to share with me in terms of my health, because I'll often be able to then sort of see those things resonated in different ways and just become more in tune with my own body and well-being. What is sort of, for me, sort of a more curious or interesting part of my experience with Wieslaw is that shortly after I went to go see him, he said quite a few things with regard to my father's health, which were really interesting. And also just, him mentioning that he sensed that he was really stressed, which at the point he was quite stressed. And so he began treating my father from a distance. So my dad never went into the office, but he was able to provide him treatments via distance. And over the course of time, my dad's anxiety and stress levels reduced. And at one point, actually, too, my dad had injured his knee over Christmas, and it was bothering him about 6 weeks later. It was around mid-February, and I had mentioned it to Wieslaw, and Wieslaw said, yeah, I get the sense that it's his right knee that's hurting him. I had mentioned this to Wieslaw, and it was just the day before that my dad had been still complaining about it. And so 2 weeks later, I saw my dad after he'd returned from holiday, and I asked him how his knee was, and he said, oh, the pain just went away. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, oh, well, I don't know. He's like, the pain just went away. And it's not like he'd done anything, but the pain had sort of, this persistent pain had subsided. And so I thought that was, for me, was like the most sort of tangible, something that you can hold in your hand a bit more kind of experience that I had, that I guess that I can speak to. But it's interesting. My dad is not open to alternative medicine in any way. And before Wieslaw was sending him energy from a distance, he had said, him and Yolanda, his partner, said, well, why don't you ask your father to come and visit us? And I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. He's not open to this thing. He said, well, just ask. And I said, okay, I'll try. And I saw my dad only once between that visit and then the next week when I was going back. And the one time I saw him in the middle of that week, he was just not in a good mood. This was before he'd received anything. So this is when he was really stressful. There was sort of a lot going on for him at the time. And I said, oh, I'm not going to bring it up now because he's not in a good mood and I know what kind of answer I'm going to get. And so I went back and I said, they said, did you ask him? And I said, no, I didn't ask them because I knew it. I didn't want to agitate things. And they said, well, that's okay, we can still send him energy. And I said, oh, well, what about consent? And they said, well, no, it's fine. They're like, he's not having to come in, and are you doing something good for him? I'm like, yeah, They're like, you're not doing anything wrong, it's that we're sending him good energy. I said, well, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, if you don't need his consent, then by all means, like, send the energy. And so, and they also said too that in having not asked him, if I'd asked him and he'd said no, that in his conscious he would have been blocked off to that energy. But because there was no sort of sense of awareness of what he was receiving, he wasn't blocked off to it. And so, again, so he was receiving this healing energy over quite some time through Wieslaw during the same time that I was receiving weekly treatments. And so when this incident with the knee happened, he said it cleared up, so I told him, I said, well, Dad, actually this healer that I've been going to is the one who healed you. And, he kind of just looked at me and said, and he's like, well, what do you mean exactly? I said, well, I told, the energy healer that I've been seeing, and he knew that I'd been going. He didn't really understand it, but I told him I'd been going. And I said, well, I told him that your knee hurt. It was hurting you, and he said he knew it was your right knee, and then he has been sending you energy. And he just thought, and I said, well, maybe one day you might want to see him in person. Maybe. And so that for me too was really telling, because I know my father, and I just know it would have never been anything that he'd ever consider. And I think after having received that energy, he intrinsically, in his subconscious became more open to the possibility of it, and here he was, more open to the idea of not completely disregarding, and being more open to the idea that he might have been able to receive energy, and that maybe, going to see this healer is not the craziest thing he could do. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting experience, I guess, over the past